And there was a second one who had used a phone app to put an image of a gray alien in a photograph. And that one also came up, but those were copycat images because they were within the range where that newspaper, when it was sold, it was being read. So and the story got around in that region, so they just kind of piggybacked on it.
Yeah, they wanted their moment in the glory, right?
Yeah, so unfortunately you had one really, really good case, what appeared to be, a fantastic one, and it was kind of messed up because the story got out. Too bad it couldn't just completely remain silent.
Did you ever try and contact him privately?
I did, and it got nowhere.
Oh.
I had phone numbers, identified who I was, I went through the email, and the same ones I used for all my initial contacts, and there was no response after that.
Wow.
And I really do believe it was because of his position, which, coming from education myself for a number of years, I could relate to. When you're in a position that he was in, you wouldn't want it public.
Right.
That you saw an alien in your bedroom. You know?
Well, Patsy seen something one night in the bedroom. She said she was laying in bed looking up in the corner of the ceiling, and it kind of opened up, and a head bent down and looked at her, and then raised back up and was gone. So she said she thinks that was a alien kind of checking on her, I guess. I don't know. I didn't see it. So
I've heard of similar things, and I've been one too who's seen kind of like, as it would term, of shadow people in a corner of the room. That I look up and I see this dark shape kind of moving, and I look and I do the double take, I do the triple take. I'm like, okay, maybe it's because I don't have my glasses on, and you put the glasses on and everything remains the same, But I've had things like that going clear back to the 1960s that I've seen. Yeah.
So there's actually an alien app now for the phone?
Yes.
Wow.
And I when I was doing the analysis of it, I could see that the image was altered. And I just was really blunt with him. I said, I got a question. I said, are you enhancing this image with Photoshop or an app or something like that? And their response came back, Barbara, I don't know anything about Photoshop. Well, you didn't answer the whole question. I said, Photoshop or a phone app. I don't know anything about Photoshop, but he didn't say anything about the app. And I couldn't find the exact same image on the app, but it was pretty much, I guess you could say, a typical type of a gray alien. That, I don't know where they got it at, but it had to come from someplace. And interesting enough, the image wasn't very far from the Halloween costume in the one other individual's photograph.
So one of the app called Alien UFO Photo Editor Prank Pictures?
I'd have to look it up. I'd have to look it up, Jeffrey. I don't know. I'd have to go back and double check it, but it was one of the first times I'd had the images come in like that. But it was interesting that here you've got the original report from a good witness, and then within 2 days, here these other pictures come in. And that's...
Well, these look kind of amateurish. I mean, there's one of a UFO hovering over like an oceanscape, but I find it interesting that they have xenomorphs sky surfing.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Patsy...
Well, we used to do that, too, with people saying that they have pictures with ghosts in them, and then you go back and there's dozens of ghost apps now. But you can almost always find them. Almost always find them.
Oh. Well, see, Barbara, going back, I used to do amateur photography where I had my own developing equipment. I did color, I did black and white back in the 1960s. And interesting enough, one of the things I did, Henry, is I was faking my own UFO photos.
Good old double
So
exposure.
Double exposure. And I remember doing crazy things. Like one of the ones I was really proud of is I had a picture of it was actually my high school I graduated from. And I thought, I'd like to put a UFO above this somehow. And I was in the house and I looked over and I saw a blender in the kitchen. I thought, wait a minute. I grabbed the lid off of the blender, the top, and I put some tape around the edges of it to kind of make it look a little bit different. And from an angle, I took a photograph and graphed it in. I was actually pretty proud of that for the 1960s. It looked really good. Now, you would have picked it up in a heartbeat if you did an analysis on it. But I remember doing another number of photographs back then that I was even trying to hoax my own.
Oh, so it would have come out looking like the tripods from War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Cool.
It looked really good though. I mean, it didn't look like a blender lid at all once I was done with it, but it was kind of cool. Huh. I was proud of that one.
It almost sounds like they have the press conference in Close Encounters where the general shows a photo saying, this is a flying saucer. And everyone's like, yeah, that's the one I saw. He says, it's made of pewter and thrown across the yard by my 10-year-old child,
Yep. That's it. And I never did tell anybody, though. I showed some of the pictures around and kind of gave the story behind it and never told anybody what I did. I just wanted to see what reaction I got back then, I guess.
Wow. Well, was there a lot of talk about UFOs and aliens, I guess, back then?
More people were reserved. Now, when I talk to people, actually, most people are fairly receptive of it. I mean, it's amazing the change because back in the 60s, everybody's pretty much quiet. If you saw stuff come up about UFOs, most of the time they looked at the person like they were nuts. Now, when I talk to somebody, most of the people I talk to say, hey, I think it is possible there's something out there. So, I mean, it's a major, major, major change from what it used to be.
Well, now, back then, were you having visions of where you had been abducted, or was this before you started realizing that?
Well, I never really kind of put two and two together. I just remember all these weird events happening back in the 1960s where I had like the sleep paralysis, missing time, these basically fears that something was coming to take me each night. And the regressions years later tended to, reaffirm that. I shouldn't say really tended. That's what they indicated, is that was happening at that time. But back then, I never really put two and two together. Like the story I've told you before about seeing a UFO hovering over me and a buddy, I never told him about it. And to me, I remember the incident, but I never really looked solidly at putting two and two together until years later. And then I said, okay, maybe that's what happened, and let's go back and revisit it when we did the regressions. And that's what it pointed to.
Wow. Okay, Barbara.
Yes.
I know you got more.
Oh, yeah, because I want to discuss the elephant in the room. And that is the new show that came on, I think it's the History Channel, called The Secrets of Skywalker Ranch, or Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker, yeah.
Yeah, Skywalker is a completely different.
Right.
Skinwalker Ranch, yeah. It's getting fascinating.
When you said elephant in the room, you had me worried there for a minute because I think I put on some weight since we've had this. Since we've had to stay indoors a lot. But anyway, I was hoping you were going to bring up Skinwalker Ranch because that was one of the things I forgot about the show to begin with when it came on a couple weeks ago because Project Blue Book, the series ended, and I saw the previews for Skinwalker Ranch. I'm like, where are they going to go with this? Because I've got knowledge of some background on that whole thing. And I wondered how they we're going to be presenting all these events with Skinwalker Ranch compared to what's come out, and maybe what are they going to add into it? Something new, or are they going to take and really go out in left field and really start exaggerating stuff? Well, for those that don't know, Skinwalker Ranch is only one, by the way, of places like this around the country. I've heard that there's roughly about 7 or so places across the U.S. that are similar to Skinwalker Ranch. And Skinwalker Ranch, by the way, is out in Utah. It started becoming known back around the 1970s, something like that. And it at first started becoming more publicized back in like the late 1990s. George Knapp, who's out of the Las Vegas area, started talking about it. There is a book that came out about the Skinwalker Ranch. And what they did is they went into the history of this ranch. And this ranch, there's Indian lore that's associated with it. And I'm always curious about that, because is there something related to the Indian culture and the things that they experienced that's just not kind of like the medicine man type stuff that's a lot of fact to it. I've gone back and done some crop circle investigations around these areas where Indian mounds are at. And I'm just really wondering what connection there may be to, stuff like that. Well, back in, it had to be back in like the 1800s. You had the Indians out there, the Navajos and the Utes. Well, there was bad blood between them because, in this case, I believe the Utes were basically having some of the Navajo turned over for like slaves to different ones out there. And what happened is the Navajos then reportedly put a curse on that region. And I hope I didn't get the Indian cultures backwards, but the Navajos put a curse on that region. And the Skinwalker is basically, it's not a medicine man. It's a spirit that's like a shapeshifter, and it can travel the region. Well, in this ranch called Skinwalker Ranch, there's been stories that's come out of beasts that look, in this case, something like wolves, beasts that change shapes. And these stories have come out over the years. Well, there was a rancher that had that region out there that owned the ranch, and they had stories about a large wolf coming out of the region. This wolf comes down, you see it looking at a pen, and there was like a cow or something inside the pen, and this wolf reaches in, grabs it, and tries to pull it out through the pen. A couple of the individuals who had the ranch were there. One was a boy who'd actually been petting this wolf like it was a dog, and it wasn't aggressive at all. But when it reached out and grabbed this livestock, it was like trying to kill it. Well, the father shoots the wolf-like creature with a high-powered pistol. It doesn't go down. It walks away. He gets a high-powered rifle, hits it again, a 30-06, and it still doesn't go down. And they find like blood trails that go out to nowhere, and they can't find it. It just totally disappears. That same family had a special breed of cattle that they were raising, and the next thing you know, the cattle starts getting mutilated and starts getting killed off. They also see UFOs in the region, orbs around the area. They hear voices on their barber coming out of nowhere. And these voices are like calling to them, talking to them. And they say they're very clear. Well, the family started getting so freaked out, and especially at one incident where they saw, like on this hill, some red eyes looking down at them from like a hill, but they couldn't see an outline of a creature, but he'd see these large red eyes looking at him. They got so freaked out that they sold the ranch. And who they sold the ranch to but Robert Bigelow.